Hi, good morning. Thanks for coming out. I wanted to kick off. We got really kind of three parts of this. I just want to kick off the presser first, talk about the last week and also what's coming. Mark Cotter, Director of Public Works, is going to talk about this current event that we thought we'd be in the middle of right now, but it's coming. And then obviously we'll turn over to Sam to do a PD briefing. First off, biggest snow event of the year so far we just had this week. It was a very unique one. We had almost a foot of snow, as you all know. Didn't realize we'd get us that much snow, so it's kind of a surprise, but we handled it very well. I think we plowed out the entire city in a little less than 36 hours, which is we shoot for that 30 to 40 hour mark to get the city plowed out, and we did it in kind of our normal fashion. I will say, though, that there's some unique elements to every weather event. So I tell people, if you've seen one storm, you've seen one storm. Earlier this week was one type of storm where we had a big lull between kind of two major cells. This weekend, we're going to see some absolutely frigid temperatures, a lot of blowing, blizzard-like conditions, and we obviously run equipment that has to run well in all conditions in order to handle the snow events. And that's going to probably pose a bit of a challenge this weekend. So part of my role is to make sure we set expectations in the community. And we need to make sure the community knows that with 3,500 lane miles to plow, we always ask for patience, but we always ask you to be good neighbors as well. Check on your neighbors, especially this weekend, and make sure you're prepared. These sorts of kind of dramatic weather events seem to be more and more common, the last several years. More unpredictability to the events than we historically have seen. So people always need to be prepared for that and ready for that. We have 100 operators. Mark's going to talk about this. 100 operators that run 12-hour shifts on and off. So we are a fully staffed team, fully resourced team, and they're doing a great job making sure that the residents can still get around and do their daily business as best as possible given the circumstances. So my key themes are this. Have patience. Thanks for your understanding as we continue to work through the uniqueness of every single snow event. Check on your neighbor and be safe. I've seen some people who get a little bit overconfident, overzealous driving some of the conditions right now, and it's very important to make sure you're not crowding plows, that you're not crowding lanes, that maybe some lanes that we're used to having 3 lanes, maybe they got narrowed a little bit, so you have to approach them a little bit safer when you come up on them. And so just drive safe as well. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mark Cotter, and he's going to talk about some of the specifics of what's coming our way in the next several days. Mark?
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. As the Mayor said, I'm Mark Cotter. I'm the Director of Public Works. Yes, just coming off of a really intense snow event that our teams and the community really, I think, came together really well on. It started snowing on Sunday, continued to snow with 2 waves of snow for 30 hours, and then as the Mayor said, we were able to get in the neighborhoods and go curb to curb in 36 hours, even with that volume of snow. So even through that whole process with the long protracted snow and then the plowing curb to curb, we got the neighborhoods back to where they are normal to. We transitioned to snow pickup, got a number of the arterial streets in addition to the downtown, and now we're back at it. So overnight we got about 2.5 inches of snow. We're expecting to get about another 1/2 inch today. Prior to that, we got a couple of skiffs in the neighborhood, so we do expect to issue a snow alert early this afternoon that will detail out the plowing schedule. Just a perspective on the snow alerts. We like to have a really good understanding of what the progression and the pace of the event is going to be, so when we issue the snow alert, we can be very specific and so people can be very predicted on when we're going to be in their respective zone. Since this one's going to bring sustained winds, extreme cold, and gusts, and what we expect will be up to 45 miles an hour, that's going to be blizzard conditions. There's going to be drifting. And so one of the things we're going to do on this event is that, just like every event, we'll plow the emergency routes. We're also going to plow the secondary routes in Zone 3. And so we want to make sure that that will allow us to be adaptable if the blizzard conditions change throughout the course of this next event. So expect to see a detailed plowing schedule here in the early afternoon. We'll get into those respective neighborhoods once we feel good about the progression and the pace of the event. As the mayor said, is from a staffing standpoint, we do have 100 operators. We have public and private operators that are working. We work on 12-hour shifts. We went on to 12-hour shifts last Sunday, and we've remained on 12-hour shifts throughout. So the teams are doing good. They're hanging in there. And we'll continue on that schedule until we're through this event. We hope that we'll get a bit of a break afterwards. But we do have 100 operators, and that's essentially about 45 city motor graders. There's another 8 private motor graders, almost 50 sanders, and then there's a handful of loaders. Throughout the course of this event, we're going to see with gusts of 45 miles an hour, and this last snow was really dry. And so we're expecting to see some significant drifting. We'll see that on the outskirts of town. Certainly utilize the city's website, utilize the city's media channels. But we've got the app, the OneLink app. Submit those requests if you get a drifting situation in your neighborhood. We'll have teams that float in respective zones and that we can dispatch and address those. To be doing that the most effectively. So throughout the course of this event, will be just like every other one. We'll do a very organized fashion. We'll first focus on emergency routes. We're going to do secondary routes in Zone 3. We'll issue the snow alert, so you'll see that we'll be into Zone 2, east-west, tonight at 8 p.m. And we'll get the city restored curb to curb like we normally do. With that, we'll take any questions, or we'll hand it over to Sam Clements.
Do you guys anticipate any power outages, or how do you guys prepare for power outages or potential power outages in town?
Yeah, so that's a good question. The question is, how do we prepare for power outages? There's actually 4 different power providers in town, and so each one of them has to maintain their own system and respond accordingly. And so if you do have any outages, you know, work directly with your provider. That'll be between City Light and Power, Xcel Energy, Sioux Valley, and Southeastern Electric. Those 4 providers are in town, and they have to get geared up for these events as well.
Do you anticipate hitting neighborhoods multiple times just because of potential for redrifting and that kind of thing?
It could be, or at least on the secondary routes in Zone 3, because we'll want to make sure we get out there and get those scraped down. You know, we've had a couple of skips of snow, and then last night with 2.5 inches of snow, and it's still snowing as we speak. Some of those secondary routes will actually get plowed, in some cases multiple times, and some of it's just the progression of how we actually plow a neighborhood out. The most important thing you can do for us is to know your zone, and if we're still going to be in your area, don't park on your street. And that's why we always issue a very detailed plowing schedule for the core, because we know the limitations of parking in the core. So really know your zone. If you're curious, if you're on a secondary route, you can go to the City of Sioux Falls website, and essentially just there's a map right on there that says emergency and secondary routes. The emergency routes are in red. The secondary routes are in blue. It's a very good graphic. We'll get it out on social media channels just so you're aware.
It's been a long week for your staff. Obviously, nothing quite compared to the run they had last year, but just making sure that they're being treated as well as they can and getting enough rest. What have you guys been doing this week to make sure that those 12 hours off can be the best 12 hours off? You can help them get ready to get back out there and get again.
That's a great point. We do different activities to make sure that they stay fresh, and we'll continue to do that throughout the course. One of the most difficult things that'll happen with the blizzard-like conditions, is the extreme cold. They're forecasting that wind chills will be between -25 and -45, on top of wind gusts that'll push, sustained at 30 with wind gusts at 45. So about the worst combination. So as the mayor said, make sure you take care of yourself, check on your neighbor. This is going to be a pretty frigid cold spell that'll really take us through probably Tuesday. So that's why you'll see us issue a snow alert early afternoon. We want to get started because we also know some of those extreme temperatures can cause some havoc with machines and diesel fuel.
How bad is visibility going to be on roads and streets in Sioux Falls?
I think we'll just have to see how this matures. But with the wind out of the north right now, it's going to transition to the northwest. That area up in the northwest is going to be a pretty challenging area.
How does the cold weather impact your snow removal equipment?
So far, it's all of our machines are running. I heard that we had one blower down because just when you're doing pickup, you're moving through a lot of material. But right now, the machines have held up really well. And we've honestly, this last snow event, the temperature was good. It's around that 20 degrees. This is going to be completely different. When you start to use the snow gates, and just with metal and this cold, that's hard on hydraulic equipment. It's also hard on diesel. So we're running the highest blend of number one and number two to keep those machines from gelling up. We've also have teams, and we have a whole complement in addition to the 100 operators that the mayor highlighted. We also have a complement of fleet mechanics. There's 25 that they also run 12-hour shifts to keep us running. And so teams really working hard together, and we'll get through this one as well, and then we'll get ready for the next one.
Mark, can you clarify what a secondary street is? When you say that they're going to be on emergency route and secondary streets, what that means?
Yes, so question was, can I clarify the secondary streets? That's why it's probably best to look at the map online. But in general, if you looked at the mile grid, the streets that are on the mile grid, those are like Minnesota Avenue, 57th Street, 69th Street. Those are all considered emergency snow routes. And then if you were to bisect that square mile, those would be major collector streets, and those are the secondaries. So when we make the decision to actually plow the secondaries, it significantly reduces the number of blocks you have to drive to get to a street that's plowed. And the reason we want to do that on this event is we know that we're going to have to be adaptable as conditions deteriorate and maybe blizzard conditions happen, which then may cause us to have to move back to the emergency routes. And so if we get in there and do a good job on the emergency routes and the secondaries, we'll just create much better travel situations for daily commuters.
What do you want people to do heading into the weekend?
Key thing, again, to emphasize what the mayor said, was stay in tune to our social media channels, know your zone, go online today and just study that emergency and secondary routes. And the key thing you can always do for us so we can do a good job for your neighborhood is know when you can park on your street. And that's the key. If you have any questions, we have teams that answer the phones, but we would really appreciate you leveraging the Sioux Falls OneLink app. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us, but really leverage some of those tools that we can best serve the community.
What would you advise people to do for travel? Should they just stay home, Toby? Should people just stay home?
I think, anytime we talk about travel and any travel advisories, we'll be working closely with the police team. And so we're not at a point today to advise on that, but it's certainly in the outside the mature city. Based on if the forecast comes what's been expected, it's going to be pretty difficult conditions, certainly outside the city.
If I'm snowed in and I'm not, my roads aren't plowed, but I'm not in an emergency route and I have an emergency, what do you suggest I do? I mean, is Sioux Falls Fire and Rescue prepared to get through the heavy snow to get to you if you're in a medical emergency at home?
Yes, I'm glad you asked that.
I'm reluctant to call 911 in those situations.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that question. So on the first event, especially with the volume of snow, we partnered up with fire. And they actually had 3 Sanders that were going out with one-way blades that were going out in front of the first responders. And I know that they addressed hundreds of calls, and they that seemed to work. And so we'll continue to do that same approach. Well, thank you. Stay tuned, and we'll be issuing a snow alert early afternoon, and certainly we'll be available for any questions throughout this event. Sam?
Really just have one thing on the log, was the aggravated assault. That was a couple of guys that know each other had some type of argument. One of them ended up using a kitchen knife and stabbed the other in the back. No serious injuries with that, no life-threatening injuries, I should say. The suspect was still there. He was arrested for the aggravated assault. Everything else is basically just reports, but any other questions? Anything?
Do you know the area that aggravated assault happened?
That was near 18th Street and Blaine Avenue. It was inside an apartment. And that was about 1 a.m. this morning is when that happened.
Cool.
Anything else for me? Okay, thanks.
I can